Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Q&A sessions. I am not joined by Tosh today. Joellen is certainly not Tosh. Tosh is having a week out, so Joellen Grizib is joining us. Joellen, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me back. I've really enjoyed working with you before, and I'm looking forward to today's session.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. I know for you have been part of the Impact Factory world for many years, training and upskilling the business community. Tell me what you're finding is going on for your world at the moment.
Well, of course, it's topsy-turvy. For us individually, as an organization, we had to switch from face-to-face training to remote, and that put us under a lot of pressure. But we're coming out of the cloud, we're coming out of the difficulty. But our resilience has really been tested. And that's why, I jumped at the opportunity when we talked about this particular subject, because it's very easy sometimes to get drowned, feel like you're drowning in all the overwhelm that's happening and forget that you actually have a lot of resilience already there. But there are ways to build resilience as well.
Well, I'm glad that you're here as our expert today, because I know our audience is really interested, but I too am super interested. We have World Mental Health Day on the 10th of October. We have had Boris Johnson telling us, Michael Gove, if you can work from home, work from home. The message has shifted, the lockdowns are happening. And I can honestly say that my own resilience has been tested. And I think I'm somebody that has worked on my resilience, and with my people, we work on that. We all have a strong mindset, but I won't lie, there's been some wobbles, me personally, at the moment.
Oh, me too. I mean, I joke and say a couple of weeks ago, our CEO had the temerity to take a week's holiday after working not a day off for this whole period. Yeah. And I was doing her work and mine. And then I just felt overwhelmed. And the things that happen to me when I'm stressed do drain me. And, one of the things that I've learned over the years is what are the danger signals that will affect my well-being, that will affect my mental health. Yeah. And one of the silly analogies, I say things just slide off my brain. You can be talking to me and it just goes, or exhaustion, sleeplessness. So many of the things that people talk about are the results of kind of having your resilience sapped.
Yeah. Well, you have got a 5-point plan you're taking us through today on resilience and stress management. Obviously, your courses that you run on resilience and stress management, I mean, how long are they usually? How long do you spend?
A day. We spend, well, certainly our open courses are a day, but we've had a lot of requests for tailored work on resilience for 3-hour sessions,
right?
Or 90-minute sessions, just to give people a really quick snapshot of the things that they can do. And, if we're talking about the first thing is sometimes we can be so overwhelmed that we don't identify the stressors. And for me, it's like, let's look what is stressing the team. Let's look at it individually and then as a team, because sometimes just having, we almost say a venting session, we say ventilation, have a conversation about what is getting you, what particularly gets your goat. What is it is it someone's behavior? Is it feeling too much work? Is it too much pressure in terms of deadlines? Once you can understand and unpick the things that are stressing you, I think it's then it kind of calms the situation down because it makes it real. Number one, it's talked about.
Yeah.
We find, as we know, talking through a situation is much easier than holding it in and feeling I have to be strong. Yeah. People are often afraid to show their vulnerability. They don't want to let down their colleagues or the whole team as a whole or the organization. But actually admitting that you're stressed isn't a sign of weakness or vulnerability. It is actually, for me, it's a good sign. I mean, people always love it when I say, help, I need help. Yeah.
Well, it's almost like a red light going off, isn't it? And it's like noticing it and saying, right, what am I going to do about that? Yeah. And that might be the bit that we miss is our alarm system going off, telling us we need to do something.
Exactly. And I have a lovely visual analogy that I pinched from when I was training as a psychotherapist. And it's called stress pots. And you imagine you have a pot of soup or stew or whatever. Yeah. And it's got a nice little flame and it's simmering, because point 2 is that you have to know what the difference is between good stress and bad stress. So think of this pot as my stress pot and it's bubbling along. I think we all need, or most people need, some form of stress to engage, to stimulate, to be creative, to problem solve. Yeah. If it's all bland and at one level, we kind of get complacent. So a little bit of stress is good. Yeah. And so there's your, sorry.
So, no, I was going to say, before we get into the nitty gritty, I'm going to let people know that today they have 30 to 40 minutes of your expertise. Our links are there at the end, and we'll send out a recording of today as well for if you are interested in taking more training. But we do hope, both Joellen and I feel, that what you're going to take away in the next 30 minutes should give you some tools to take back to your worlds. Yeah. As always, we have a Q&A box on the right here. This is a chat box. Don't be shy. Tell us your thoughts, give us questions, give us your scenarios, tell us what's going on in your world, because Joanne and I love a statistic, and I've been doing some really up-to-date sort of Google searching around what's going on out there, and apparently only 30% of employees would say that they are resilient when surveyed. And that means 70% of employees in an organization would have lower engagement, because lack of resilience can impact mental well-being, impacts how we manage stress, coming back to the stress part, which then leads to lower engagement. And half of those decide that they don't want to be in the company. So the unraveling that comes from not addressing resilience is it's not only an emotional and personal one for people, but it's a huge impact to the bottom line of any organization. So this is, key on so many levels. So where shall we start? Well, I remember you were telling me yesterday when we were talking about the topics and what we want to cover off and how to pull together, some really, key points in a short period of time. But you were telling me, first of all, Joellen, about the different types of stress.
Yes, about the idea that we really need something. For me, I do. I joke and say I often take off more than I can chew, bite off more than I can chew, because it stimulates me. It engages my creativity. It challenges me. I like being challenged. Now, not everybody does to the same degree, but I do think that if you're doing the same job day in and day out without any little grit going on, it's easy to get complacent and it's easy to get disengaged.
And you were talking about being overworked and underworked, being stressed, which I'd never thought of.
Yes. So if you think about it, underwork means you're not being used to your full potential. And that's a really easy way to disengage. Being overworked takes you out of what we think of as the sweet spot of just that point at which you're at your optimum creativity and your optimum productivity. We have one of our trainers is a former Chelsea football player.
Oh, wow.
He talks about, when he talks about what he calls the stress curve, he says that in football, the players at the top rank all have these jackets that they wear that are all sending, what their blood pressure is and all their brain scans and all of this to kind of identify physically what the optimum zone is. But they know that if you overwork that optimum zone, you put your best players in and you're always going for them first off, the ones who don't have that, the disengaged ones the underworked ones will lose interest and ask for a transfer. And the overworked ones will actually say, we'll be subject to injury. So if you think about that in the corporate world or our world, if you're overworked, you will burn out. You will just burn out. And even though you may be very, very resilient, it will drain you to the point where you can't function anymore.
Yeah. And there are signs, aren't there, of when people go from, the good stress of feeling, I know I do my best work under pressure, but again, there's that point when the pot boils over, that all of a sudden it's like, I don't know whether I'm coming or going. I mean, what signs would somebody look for to notice if somebody is stressed?
Being tearful. One of the first things, because I get tearful, so I think of that as a good sign for me is that, oh, I'm feeling tearful for no reason. Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing, which when we talk about mental health or mental well-being, is that we stop doing the things that take care of ourselves. It's extraordinary. Here we are under stress, and what do? We start eating badly. We stop exercising. We'll snuggle in and not go out for a walk.
The energy levels, don't they? All of a sudden, you just don't feel like doing anything that is going to be good for you.
Yes, and it's sometimes on such an unconscious level but it multiplies the problem, because if you're not eating well, you're not sleeping well, you're not taking care of yourself, your stress will just increase. Yeah. And I think that's always fascinating, that the very thing that could help us is the thing we're not doing.
I think we lose the ability, and again, I think I noticed this in myself, because I've been working hard to kind of keep some exercise going, doing some meditation. I encourage my team to use the Headspace or the Calm app to, or even meditative walking. And then, around the beginning of September, I literally felt like I didn't want to do anything, almost rebellion. Yes. And yet I know that's the best thing for me.
I know it's really true. A friend gave me, I've moved from the country into a town, and I used to have a big garden with a vegetable patch and all of this. And a friend here gave me a little patch on her allotment, said, go. And that's my refuge. And no matter how rotten I feel on Sunday is my day to hoe and pull weeds and I pick the vegetables a few times a week. And it's the one thing I just haven't released. I have still hold on to that because it feeds me so well, both physically and emotionally. But there was one day last week when it was raining, and I thought, maybe I'll just skip it this week. But don't do that, Joelle. Don't do that, because you always feel better. You always feel uplifted when you come back.
Yeah. Do you think that everyone working remotely means that, businesses and managers can't necessarily spot the signs of this as easily?
That's a really interesting thing. I have found with my team that I'm almost spotting it more, because we Zoom a lot. We Zoom a lot, and I can hear it in their voices, but I also talk to them, on the phone. So I think that maybe because I know my people so well, I do pick up that something is amiss. I'm not going to catch everything, but the biggest thing that I have found is that if I admit I'm having difficulty, other people are willing to admit they're having difficulty too. If I hold up my hand and say, this has been a really stressful week and I haven't coped very well, that gives permission. So there is something about admitting. And then the other thing is I do ask for help. And one of my trainers said, that was the email I read when you said at the top, I need your help. It was like, oh, this is serious, Yeah.
So it's creating a safe environment for openness to feeling that people are either feeling overworked and the stress pot has boiled over, or feeling, do they not need me anymore? And being able to be open about that. That's step one.
Yeah, I agree with that completely.
And if a manager spots, they haven't spotted the signs, but they've spotted, you talked about being tearful. I know another one that I've seen is almost an agitation when almost like a kind of the door is shut and they don't want to take any more in, and things become a nuisance. And you can see people almost change personality, can't you? And I can feel that in myself as well. We lose patience.
Yes, there's one person who, when she gets short-tempered, I know, okay, something's afoot, because she's usually quite calm. And that little snappy behavior is also a very good sign.
So if we're in a business environment, we've acknowledged, especially now with the second lockdown, a lot of the conversations are around, oh my God, we've got 6 months of this to go. And it's not in the summer days when we can look outside the window or go for a walk. It's dark, it's rainy, it's going to be shorter days. What would you say is the best way for a company to support their people in their stress management and help them become more resilient? What are the tools?
One of the things that, we've discovered, or not discovered, it's not like, oh, we've discovered this, but that we acknowledge is that people actually are more resilient than they think they are. And it is, in a way, if you're talking to people, is to say, well, when were you resilient? It doesn't have to be a work-related thing. When did you overcome the odds? And what did you do? What did you pull upon? And it's sometimes just to remind people that they have that strength and that they do have a nice pool of resources that maybe in the heat of when the heat gets turned up under that pot, they forget about. We often on our workshops will draw our stress pot. And one I did recently had someone who had a ladder in her stress pot to get out, but she was drowning on the other side of the pot because she forgot that she actually did have a way out.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was great.
People to draw their stress pot.
Oh, yes. Loads of fun.
I love a visual. Tell me more.
Well, if you think about it, it's like you have your nice pot, and I'm a vegetarian, so it's all vegetable soup in mine. And it's doing one drawing where you identify the things that you can see that are good stress. So for me, it will be, running a masterclass, and I've got one this afternoon for Impact Factory, and, all the thing that means getting a hold of mailing lists and doing this and that and writing a big proposal that is due soon. And all of that's nice and it's bubbling nicely. And so I know I can look at the shape of my day and I know what I need to do. What tips me over and where the pot boils over is either too much gets put in the top. Oh, there's another tender to do. Or, oh, I have to fill in for this. Or someone's asked me to help them with something else. And then deadlines. So the heat is up and the flames are boiling, creating more heat. There's too much in the pot and it just spews all over the place. And I can no longer see the shape of the day. I can no longer say, well, I have to do this and then I'll do this. And it's a progression. And that's when we talk about on our workshops what we call a moment of choice. Okay, in that moment of choice of how I'm going to react, you have to breathe. Because one of the things, and I'm sure if you asked your people, as we do here, you stop breathing. You don't stop breathing because you'd be dead, but you kind of do shallow breathing.
Yeah.
You do shallow breathing and you don't take a deep breath in. And someone had a just very simple analogy. She said, think of a rectangle that you take 3 counts to breathe in, then 6 counts to breathe out, 3 counts to breathe in, 6 counts, and you do 3 of those and stop, and it's very effective because your brain stops going into overdrive.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I really do myself. And the other, again, very simple thing is you get up off your chair, because it's very easy to get glued here, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. And
go to a window and look 20 meters to whatever your view is, even if it's the end of your house or your flat, just 20 meters for 20 seconds, just to look at something else. And if you do that in conjunction with the breathing, it just puts you in a different physical space, and it begins to calm the chat down.
Yes, you also mentioned grounding, so that is a form of grounding, would you say?
Yes, we were talking about this yesterday. Sometimes I just take off my shoes and socks, or slippers and socks, because sometimes I'm still in my slippers.
Yeah.
And then just get grounded that way. So if you do all 3 together, take off your shoes and socks, go to a window, look 20 meters out, and do that rectangular breathing, and then go back to the problem. It will just calm things down.
Yeah.
It's like putting the brakes on for a little bit.
And I think that's the thing about supporting our workforce, actually, as business leaders or people that are responsible for the people in your company. It's not just about saying, hey, this is how you manage resilience. This is about encouraging the practice of resilience and the tools you use and go to when you need to get back to that place. And I think that's the thing about mental well-being and resilience is it's not a one size fits all. No. It's not a let's attend a course and then we're there. I mean, so much of courses is about the follow-up and the checking back in and are you doing it? So I think one thing is giving the tools, and then it's following up and checking in with people on how they're utilizing the tools and whether that's working or not.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing, and I cannot reiterate this enough because I've had to learn it the hard way, because I was strong. You know, I was the adapted child when I was growing up and took care of everybody else. So I couldn't. And I even overheard my father once, he did a little psychotherapy, saying, we don't have to worry about Joellen. She can take care of herself. And I was like 11. It was like, ooh, I guess I have to take care of myself. So I've had to learn to show my vulnerability and to let people know that I'm stressed and having difficulty. And I really have to say that if you let people know, they're more willing to help you than not. If you keep it all bottled up, it will come back to haunt you. It will undermine you. It will undermine your well-being and your mental well-being.
Yeah. And my reflection on that would be the vulnerability that you mentioned, but then actually being able to use those words, which I find very difficult. Please help me. Like you said, oh, I don't think I've actually ever done that. I might have circumnavigated it to the point where someone says, can I help you? Yeah. I always find it very difficult to ask for help. So I think the two things you mentioned again were to me when we were talking about this was the asking for help and then being open to really sharing what's going on.
Yes, and totally. It really did transform things because, I'll often ask people, we need this or we need that, and could you help out? But to actually say, I need help as my subject matter in the email meant that I had an outpouring of what can I do? How can I help? And it just relieved me of feeling I was in it by myself. And even though I have a great CEO and a terrific business partner, sometimes when I get into that state of there's so much, like deadlines, that I forget that help is out there for me.
Yeah. It's such a broad subject and such a broad sort of solution when we get this right. And it's helping organizations like us. And as you said, you do days on this, you do a 3-hour course. We're trying to fit it in about 30 minutes. What would you say that, you do the grounding, you do the breathing. What does that give you? What does that, how can you use the space you've created?
It's really interesting. I was doing this with a organization just last week. We had a 90-minute session, and it was, and you may hate this, giving up perfection, being good enough, doing it well enough rather than perfectly. There are so many people that I know, including many of my trainers, who want it to be perfect, want a proposal to be perfect, or this to be perfect, or that to be perfect. If you can give up that idea of perfection, you turn the heat down. If you think about it, perfection is turning the heat up under your pot. It's got to be better. It's got to be right. And actually being good enough as a person, as an employee, as a manager, as a leader, sometimes is what you need to do.
Yeah. And that's a good lesson to learn and know. Probably a harder one to put into practice.
It is really, yes. Right. Just get your head around it first and then think, oh, is this actually stopping me from doing what I need to do and moving on if I'm stuck in that place? And I know from me, I was a real perfectionist, and I've had to discipline myself to be perfect and being not perfect.
Yeah, you become perfectly imperfect.
Exactly.
Well, you talk about reframing as a tool, to enable you to be more resilient. How does that work in practice?
Oh, that's such a great question, because just think about it. What do we, as human beings, we're kind of geared to it's wired in, to look for the negative, to look for the mastodon, to look for the thing that's going to bite us in the behind. And so we often tend to look for the negative or react to things in a negative way. Isn't this terrible? Blah, 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 whatever it might be. And the reframe is, well, that's a challenge. Well, that's an interesting thing I now have to tackle. And so it's changing your language as well. And when you present a problem, I do have a challenge here. There's an issue. Rather than, I don't think I can cope, this is terrible. And the more you use terms like that, you keep
reaffirming it.
Not only reaffirm it, you're actually releasing chemicals in the body that depress you.
Right.
Physiologically, when you are negative, you store certain hormones and enzymes that are released that just catapult you into the next level of depression.
That keep pulling you down.
Yeah. So it's not being cheerful all the time, because who can be, or saying it's all positive, but it's just noticing the language of how easy it is to slip into, oh, isn't that terrible? And then you say, yeah, it's really terrible. And we share our bad luck stories, and we, share our cup of tea over our bad luck stories, and we top each other with our bad luck stories. And actually, if we think about it is a challenge, I am having some difficulty with it. I wonder what we can do to solve it. Wonder what we can do to, and that is a reframe.
Well, and that's what's needed. I've got a question from the group here. With the question is that I have employees who I can see are troubled, but they're not willing to be open and not opening up about what. So the question is, what are they? They're not opening up about what the challenges are. How would we deal with that?
Well, certainly, Zoom is a challenge, or even face-to-face is a challenge, is giving people sometimes the space to say, I can see, you're very good at hiding that there's something going on, but I can now see that there is. I will give you the time that you need to speak to me about it, but the only way I can help you solve it is for you to be open with me.
Yeah. And another question here is, what if they are then underperforming and that is not acceptable?
Well, that is, and now you put your commercial hat on, don't you? You have to. I mean, and for me, and they are difficult conversations. I mean, we have them, but to say, we can see you're not performing well. What can we do together? There is something about not the finger of blame. You aren't doing this. You have to do this. We can see, make it something more inclusive. We can see that you're struggling.
Yeah.
How can we together find a way out of this?
Yeah, there's a phrase that I've heard and now picked up and we talk about in our webinar series, is the check in rather than check up on your people.
Yeah.
And actually almost setting the scene that, as an organization, we are here to support you through this time, and therefore we will be working with you to help you with your stress management and resilience. We want to help you improve. If you're good, let's be great. If you've never done it, let's get you good. It should become part of the fabric of how we work. And, I think as an organization and as a culture, we do take care of our people. But even now, as I've been talking through this with you, Joellen, I probably haven't done this systematically with my people. So I'm already in the mindset that I want to help, and there's steps that I'm missing. I'm sure, there's so many in our audience as well who are thinking, okay, yeah, I could do that and I could do that.
Well, I think you've brought up something that is really crucial, is that we are, at least in my circle, all overworked. We're doing more than we did before. I mean, I'm going to be 73 in a few weeks, and I'm working harder than I have ever worked in my entire life. And I'm a hard worker. Setting up the factory 30 years ago, we worked every weekend, but it was fun. We were starting a new company. Now it is actually dealing with the effects of a global pandemic, and the restrictions that has done has been not of our choosing. And any kind of change that is imposed creates an additional stress. If we choose to change, if we choose to take the organization or the world or whatever it is in a different direction, that's one thing. But having it imposed means that you are challenged in a different way. So, we're all asking those questions.
Yeah. And one of the areas that resilience and stress management needs to be managed is in reframing the journey back to work and starting to be in the office, because that, again, is a real mixed bag of emotion, risk, worry, anticipation, nervousness. How would you advise a business who were thinking about getting their people back? How would you advise them to approach that with their people, utilizing these tools?
Well, because it certainly is to have the conversations and the individual conversations about what, who's eager to come back and whether and who isn't and why not. Because if you can get to the root of what's underneath the concern and the fear, I mean, some of it is just that some people just love working from home now. And it's also for you to assess, is that person really necessary in the office?
Yeah.
Can we have a combination? So we do. We have a combination of someone who is just so, she's practically racing down the street to get back into the office. And often she's the only one there because not everyone, and we are doing a little bit of face-to-face training, but most of it is still remote. So we've got the balance, but we don't need to have everyone there. If you need to have everyone there, then you need to explain that in a way that encourages people to open up about what the fear is. Is it just because they love being in their Jimmy Jams all day? Which could be, or they don't want the commute, or they really are genuinely concerned. And I think that the dialogue helps, just keeping the dialogue open.
Yeah. I think your point about the breathing, the grounding, giving you the headspace to reframe, then produces what I think is the key, the light bulb, is the creativity.
Yes.
That actually by creating the space, solutions come to the person individually. So this doesn't all have to be business driven or manager led. It's a facilitation process, isn't it? It
really is, because what we found, particularly in going from face-to-face training to remote training, is that when we would just have plain, ordinary brainstorming sessions, on Zoom, and just throwing out ideas and tossing things, it was exhilarating, it was fun, it was stimulating, rather than how are we going to get through this and how are we going to convince our clients that we can go back, we can do remote just as well as we can do face-to-face. And we all were in that mindset initially, oh, I hate Zoom and I can't do this and it's not as good as face-to-face. Yeah. And eventually everyone, there's one or two who are still a little reluctant, but for the most part, everyone is great. What else can we do? And how can we manage this? And what else can we offer our clients? So it took a while, but it was, again, the reframing is that this isn't a bad thing. This is what the situation is now. And how do we make it work for us?
Yeah. And I think also that the fact that there's no one size fits all, there's no end to this problem and solution. It's ever evolving. We can try things, keep what works, let go of what doesn't, kind of taking the pressure off it. I guess it's what you said earlier about being good enough.
Yes.
I think that is such a powerful point actually as well.
And I think that, we've survived a number of crises, and we have, in May, in March and April, in May, it just was a cliff. And we really, I was doing my plan B. What do we do if we go under? And then I had to say, okay, we are not going to go under. We are not going to go under. But I just want to add something that maybe people will resonate with people. When there were the big issues, saving Impact Factory, getting people on board, somehow the resilience was there. It sometimes is the little things that just is that one too much thing in the pot. The little kind of day-to-day thing that just is, I can't do this anymore, seems to often take a bigger toll on me than the big issues where I seem to be able to pull that strength up. But it was some of the little tiny tasks that just seem I don't want to bother doing this.
Yeah. So this stress part is what we come back to, get people to draw their stress part and start to really understand what can be removed without impacting the bigger picture.
Exactly.
To keep it simmering and not overboiling.
Yes, putting it, and we have a wonderful analogy, don't we? Put it on the back burner. Take some of your pot out and put that into another pan in the back burner, and at some point you can bring it forward. But there are things. What I've learned is even in this, I have to do it all kind of mentality. Actually, there are things that can wait.
Yeah. And so starting these conversations and then keeping it as part of your check-ins, keeping it as part of your one-on-ones, whether you have them weekly, quarterly, monthly, we'll just start everyone starting to think. And I love what you said as well about your resources of resilience. I think that is something actually which I think can be our takeaway. What we finish on is that everyone has been resilient at some point, and how to tap into
Yeah.
The last time I had to be resilient, how did I handle it?
Yes, exactly. Yes, I agree 100%.
Wonderful. Well, Joellen, you have been fantastic for joining us.
So much.
Notice you're a fountain of knowledge and expertise, and I know we've only scratched the surface today, but I'm going to show everyone the slide. But Joellen and I literally put 5 points together. My stress management was that the tech wasn't working today. But for everyone who's attended today, we will get the notes out to you in the follow-up video. What I would also say, which is the reason why we do this, is that we're here to help. And as much as you've had an overview, both Joellen and I will put our contact details. Follow us on LinkedIn. You'll get even more. From connecting with us and seeing what we share, what expertise not only we bring, but our business community as well. And we love to hear from you. We love to know that what we're doing is what you need. So thank you for the questions and thank you for the comments today. And we look forward to seeing you all again very soon. And Joellen, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. It's fun. I love talking to you.
Brilliant. Well, and you add so much value. So we really appreciate it. Have good days, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks.